Welcome to Look, Look and Look Again, where we love things retro and programmes all culty and hip, not forgetting films of course as well. Let me take this opportunity to guide you into the realms of TV and celluloid from yesteryear, where it was daring, innovative and progressive, and no snowflake or member of the white middle-class liberal elite interfered in broadcasting in their pious way for the cause and crusade of political correctness. Oh, these days, I hope to cover film and television and share my passion, some knowledge and some facts with you, so it inspires you to look, look and look again. On today's show, it's... Let's move on to Season 2. As mentioned, the ending of Season 1, which finished with the episode that saw Toby Wren get blown up and ended with a bang, certainly, called Survival Code. It was the actual aftermath that formed the plot of the first story of Season 2, called You Killed Toby Wren, in which Quist is racked with guilt and cannot come to terms with Wren's death. Ridge taunts him about the disaster and holds him entirely responsible, paving the way for some excellent drama between the two main leads. You Killed Toby Wren was a superb opening story that highlighted the intricate and complex dynamics involving the Doomwatch team, personally, without oversaturating the plot. Also, this episode introduced the new Wren substitute, Mr. Jeff Hardcastle. Fresh-faced graduating scientist Hardcastle stumbles across some sick genetic engineering and, with the assistance of his colleague, begins to delve deeper. Thus, the very first story got underway of Doomwatch's second outing. Although some of the stories this time around are undoubtedly ingenious, I noticed overall they steer away from being too prophetic, which is a shame, as this worked so well in the first season.
Morning.
Morning.
Oh, good morning, Dr. Quist. I'm Barbara.
Morning, Doctor.
So you want to join Doomwatch? Well, that's one way of getting stretched, I suppose.
No.
What?
I haven't asked to join Doomwatch.
Quist thinks you have.
No, I'm asking for his help. You're the only outfit with the power to help, at least I think you are.
Help in what way?
Stop my professor's research without crucifying him, which is what the papers would have done.
Do you mind telling me what you're talking about?
The first animal-man hybrid.
What?
Eric Hale, my professor, has achieved the first known human-animal hybrid. He
You
succeeded.
do mean part human, part animal.
Yes.
Bestiality?
What?
Bestiality?
No, that's complete fallacy. No, there's no direct sexual implication. Reproduction that way is genetically impossible. No, Haaland inserted human genetic material into the animal's egg cell. Fertilization was orthodox.
I'm sorry, you've lost me. I'm just an ignorant chemist. What do you mean, insert human genetic material?
What is that? You take human cell tissue and you mix it with the animal tissue.
The animal egg?
Well, not exactly. The cell structure from which the egg is formed.
Simple.
Not quite as simple as all that. There's quite a bit of adjustment needed because of the difference in nuclear protein.
And then what?
How do you mean?
Or when you fiddle with your protein.
Well, that's it.
Is it?
Yeah. Apart from fertilization.
Oh, a mere detail.
An important one.
Ah, yes. Fertilization by whom?
Now you're back on the old wives' tale. No, by what? The egg is fertilized by the animal's mate in the normal way.
In a normal way, yes. There's a bit of a development, though, really, on the birds and the bees, isn't it?
That's exactly my point.
Yes, I see. What you're telling me in a straightforward, simple way is that your man is merely making a monster.
In this case, a chicken with a human head.
Fortunately, in the second series of Doomwatch, the transition from the old to the new and involvement of fresh leads is a subtle one. The secretary changes as a bubbly blonde Pat Honeysett leaves and is replaced by the raven-haired beauty Barbara Mason. Vivian Sherrard really brings Barbara into her own, not just regulated to serving coffee in a crimply mini-dress, she begins also to help out in some of the cases. Jeff Hardcastle was another change, but due to this character being a bit bland, he kind of fades into it all a bit. He simply doesn't have the charisma of Powell. Despite this short change, is convincing enough in his participation at the very least. The other noticeable addition was a female equal to Quist and Ridge in the form of Dr. Faye Chantry. It is alleged that Chantry was brought into the mix in order that women were profiled more ostensibly in the series. Although her performance was good enough, there still seems a slight holdback for the character, as though she wasn't permitted to dominate over her male counterparts. BBC politics at the time, script writing and general sign of the times, I am not sure and don't really care, as it doesn't deter from the programme's polished standard. Another semi-regular was Dr. Anne Tarrant, played by the erudite Elizabeth Weaver. Tarrant is brought in to sort out Quist's head after the fallout after the Wren tragedy, and she appears now and again until eventually she and Quist gets hitched in season 3 and eventually becomes a permanent fixture. Tarrant specialises in psychology and things neurological, which gives the scriptwriters to develop some tales of psychological smog as well as the pollution that is there in front of our eyes. As the original series, Doomwatch Season 2 wasn't afraid of tackling grim issues or taking on unscrupulous immoral fat cats of industry. The stories were on occasion decidedly weaker than the first time around, but still suitably made a point and never failed to deliver on poignancy either.
That's an improvement.
What is?
You look surprised.
Pleasantly, I hope.
Yes.
Have you...
Yes. Start again. Put it right.
Please,
Yes?
when do I see you again?
You don't have to.
Not professionally.
You have my number.
Season 2 of Doomwatch didn't end on such a spectacular note as the first, but doesn't lose none of its power thanks to John Paul's stunning performance at the end of Season 2 episode Public Enemy, which was used in the opening of our third episode of Look, Look and Look Again. The way in which the direction complements the forthcoming speech orated by Quist is absolutely spot on. The season ends with a message from the Doomwatch team lectured to the attendees at a village hall, and then finally as Quist looks into the camera to us. What is noteworthy is that the whole of Season 2 has been left unscathed by the merciless wiping policy of the BBC at the time. Thankfully, the series was a huge hit over in Canada, and some of the episodes were saved over there and were brought back to the BBC, where they left gathering dust on the shelves until in the mid-1990s UK Gold broadcast the series again. So those nostalgic nuggets of a green first were able to be seen again when UK Gold was good. That was the last time it graced our screens, sadly, and apart from the odd clip in programmes, the best way to view it now is thankfully to Simply Media, who released the DVD, although the episodes that feature on the DVD aren't that good in quality, to be honest with you, and to be perfectly honest, comparing them to the recordings that I made on video from UK Gold, the UK Gold quality is infinitely superior. So as an overview, Season 2, the first episode, You Killed Toby Wren, was broadcast on the 14th of December 1970, and Doomwatch moved to a later slot of 9:50 PM to 10:40. until it went back in January to the 9:20-10:10 slot. The first episode, You Killed Toby Wren of season 2, dealt with genetic engineering and hybrid experimentation, featuring some poor chickens with human heads. Yes, indeed. Invasion was a second one, which dealt with bacterial weapons and water supply contamination via chemicals. There's a brilliant scene of biohazard-suited men wandering around the house, and that was quite chilling in this episode of Invasion. After Invasion by Martin Worth, we had The Islanders by Louis Marks, which dealt with immigration, evacuation and the human condition, not to mention elements of earthquakes. This was a decent episode, seeing immigrant vulnerability from all sides. That was followed by No Room for Error by Roger Parks, which was about wonder drugs and the dangers of them. That was a good thought-provoking tale, however I found it to drag quite slightly. By the Pricking of My Thumbs was followed by Robin Chapman, which looked at the interesting cases of the extra Y chromosome and how it's associated with violent behaviour. This was an excellent story and really makes you think. Some pretty gruesome pranks and a fine performance by the young male lead. The Iron Doctor by Brian Howes followed that, which is dealt with euthanasia by computer decision and the redundancy of the human race. This was very outstanding and a nightmarish vision of potential things to come, which proves that Doomwatch can be extremely prophetic. Flight into Yesterday by Martin Worth followed that, and that was about the devastating effects of jet lag and the dangerous side effects of time distortion. I thought this episode was brilliant. It was a little bit far-fetched, but pertinent to everyone who suffered from jet lag. It was a superb script, and there was also some groovy lounge music as well.
Is that what happened to you?
Even now I'm reluctant to admit it. But you see, a man being brainwashed comes to love his tormentor. Because he's so ashamed of being taken for a ride, he'd rather swear blind that's where he wanted to go anyway.
It what? You're sure? Thank you. It got in 35 minutes early. They're already on their way to the hotel.
Where's it? I want Ainsley. And where's my suitcase? I've got to work on that paper.
I'm afraid I have to tell you, Minister, the lecture will have to be postponed. Now, if you'd go to your room...
To do what? Rest? I didn't fly 6,000 miles to rest. And where's my...
You must tell the Congress he can't possibly appear, Miss Wills.
I came out here to read that paper, and read it I shall at the appointed hour.
What are you trying to prove? There's no shame in being tired, is there? It's 1 o'clock in the morning to you.
Past my bedtime.
Your whole physical and mental makeup has been thrown out of gear.
I'm so sorry.
You need 24 hours to adjust before you're fit to do anything.
I will show you that you are wrong. You will see that however suspect the minister's action...
Doomwatch.
Yeah, what is this?
Isn't it true that Doomwatch is an affront to a free society? The first step to state control of industry?
Look, the minister has no comment to make. No comment.
You sure about that?
Now, look, will you please get these people out of here and take the minister to his suite?
But we were promised a press conference.
Just tell them what Doomwatch really is. The truth as you see it. Now, you remember what it is you want to say.
The minister has no statement to give to the press, gentlemen. Doomwatch recognizes that we live in the 20th century, and it wants to make everybody happy about that.
No.
Now, it's the minister they want to interview, Dr. Step.
Doomwatch doesn't want to interfere with anybody.
Do you know what you're saying?
Of course I know. I'm the minister of...
What's the matter with him?
It's all right, I'm the doctor. Minister, he's had a heart attack. Will you get an ambulance?
Yeah, help me, somebody.
After the dangerous and somewhat, or could be deadly, effects of jet lag and dangerous side effects from Flight into Yesterday, we then went on to The Web of Fear, written by Jerry Davis, which dealt with yellow fever and deadly spiders in the Scilly Isles. This is an outstanding adventure from Davis and doesn't fail any of the Doomwatch trademarks we have come to know and love. In the Dark followed that by John Gould. It's about mustard gas and the ethics regarding artificial life support. Then there was a human time bomb that we referred to in our previous episode of Look, Look and Look Again, which was to do with urban neurosis, mental and psychological breakdown caused by urbanization. The Inquest followed that by Robert Holmes, which was about rabies alert and was an excellent, if not rather wordy, drama and an opportunity for Toby Blanchard as Colin Bradley to shine. It was a bit talky, as I said, but engrossing nevertheless. The Logicians by Dennis Spooner followed that, which was about technological brainwashing and computers that teach criminal superiority to the young. That was scary stuff, well paced and plotted, but it does seem to flag a bit. Public Enemy rounded off the season, which was about industrial and governmental cover-ups, toxic gases and pollution and its effects on the community. It was a decent story featuring a young Trevor Bannister who plays Mr. Lucas in the Are You Being Served hilarious comedy series. The story was a little weak, but it was saved by a wonderfully apocalyptic Doomwatch ending speech. John Paul played Dr. Spencer Quist, Simon Oates, Dr. John Ridge, John Nolan, Jeff Hardcastle, Toby Blanchard, Colin Bradley, Vivian Sherrod, Barbara Mason, John Barron played the Minister, and Elizabeth Weaver played Dr. Anne Tarrant.
Receptacle for all your reactions, all your memories. But they were reactions to things you experienced with your body. Memories of things your body did. What's going to happen when you isolate your brain altogether? You'll have nothing to relate anything to.
It won't need to relate. You persist in thinking in physical terms. In my mind, I can be what I want.
What do you do when you want to die? How do you manage that?
Why should I?
You're helpless now.
As body may be, forget the body for once, Chris. Think of mind, only mind, disembodied mind, and the freedom that gives for thought. I shall be able to do nothing, but I shall be able to think all things. You have a very limited idea of humanity, Quist. The one thing that raises man above the level of the animals is mind.
And there is another thing. Foreknowledge of death. Animals don't know they must die. We do. Man is the only animal who knows. Not like the elephant. briefed in time for that inquest.
What inquest?
Colin, you don't seem to be keeping up with things very well, do you?
Well, I have got my own job, you know, with Dr. Chantry on leave and John Ridge still in
The
Mauritius.
girl has died of rabies.
Oh, that.
Oh, that? That's all we need.
It's no use. It'll take us hours to shift this lot. We better find another way.
Come on. Up you come. Let's do the limbo. Come on, baby.
And a mammal.
Fundamental research. I'd like to take you and blast
Hey, what do you think you're... Oh, leave me alone.
Oh, stop it! You ape.
You disgust me.
The feeling's quite mutual.
You do this, you blaspheme science. When there's a worse horror than this. It's what goes on inside your head.
Does anything go on inside yours?
Broke Evan's jaw.
Call the police.
Oh, the police will be here soon enough. I'll see that the Home Office cancels your license. There'll be no more animals here. This is where your experiments stop.
How wrong you are.
Well, we'll see how wrong I am. You won't get round the law. I personally will see that it's enforced.
We have all the animals we need to complete the experiment.
No more animal experiments without a license.
Now listen. Oh, why not? The damage is done. Anyway, it'll appeal to his horrid little morbid mind. Give this to the newspapers. Those are animal-stroke-man hybrids. What we're working on is a man-stroke-animal hybrid. We have women volunteers.
You can't mean...
That's exactly what I do mean. I'm 3 months pregnant myself. Think of it, John Ridge. Had we met 3 months ago instead of last night, you might have been its father.
And so on to Season 3, the final series of Doomwatch. Considered by some and arguably one of the weakest seasons, as there's bugger all to represent it in the archives, quite frankly. We'll never be able to judge for ourselves if it was the weakest of the three. The opening story, titled Fire and Brimstone, saw Dr. Ridge disillusioned with the world around him, holding key cities across the globe to ransom with files of anthrax. Apparently based on reports, as there are no viewing materials or audio or scripts, there are some elements that can be formed as a synopsis. The third season steered away from the grittiness and the environmental dread aspect for a more personal life emphasised plot. Dr. Anne Tarrant becomes a permanent fixture and marries Quist. The only additional person to the cast introduced in season 3 is Commander Neil Stafford. Stafford is a mole planted by the Minister, so Doomwatch is unknowingly placed under political scrutiny. Another area where the third series seemed occupied with was boardroom drama and political opinion, dominating several stories this time round compared to the last 2 seasons. I can't comment on John Bound's performance as Stafford, as I've only seen 3 episodes that exist and feel it unfair to base any opinion of a character when the resource material is so poorly represented. Colin Bradley returns and seems to duo with Secretary Barbara Mason on a few adventures. Despite only a few representative episodes of Season 3 Doomwatch, I did notice that there is a slight change in atmosphere. In the first 2 seasons, there was a strong focus on developing the plot at the Doomwatch offices. More emphasis was on teamwork in the earlier stories. But by the 3rd season, this seems to shift, becomes slightly scattered somewhat. There are frequent cosy chats between Tarrant and Quist in their newfound domesticity, and the lab scenes at Doomwatch HQ become lessened. For me, this seemed to dull down the impact compared to the earlier series, and with only fleeting pop-ins to the laboratory, it seems sci-fact had become second place to the proceedings. Such scenes are more intimate and are of some interest on the outset, but outstay their welcome, and occasionally are merely there to pad out the plot line and the running time. The episodes I have seen are very wordy and appear more slower in pace than before. The dramatics are still of a high calibre though, and the plots, despite being a bit hit and miss, are still interesting enough. But it seems that at this stage in the series' life, the initial concept of the programme begins to lose direction and foresight. By the end of the final season, Doomwatch was showing signs of flagging. The last series was due to be 13 episodes in total, but only 11 were ever broadcast. The episode Sex and Violence was made but was unbroadcast. The main reservation for not screening the episode was that some of the characters bared too strong resemblance to actual persons in the media. Example, the severely oppressed draconian Lord Longford and Mary Whitehouse, amongst others. To prevent legal issues, the programme remains untransmitted in the United Kingdom to this very day. I believe it was broadcast overseas. Another reason was a controversial decision to use a real-life military execution. Although this could not be an issue now, back in the day it may have raised a few corporate eyebrows at the BBC. With this episode becoming more and more of a liability, the easiest decision was to shelve it. Unfortunately, Sex and Violence was also held back from the UK gold repeats in the mid-1990s, and the episode The Logicians was broadcast in its place. The season's swan song was to be The Devil's Demolition, about properties being built on the Greenbelt and the ethics of that, but the story never got to the filming stage. Kit Pedler and Jerry Davis were not very impressed with what the series had become and washed their hands of it. Terence Dudley still pursued with their idea and defended the 3rd season, championing the fact that they were still dealing with hot ecological topics. This is seemingly true, judging by the synopsis we have to go on. However, if the episodes that exist are representatives of the season as a whole, we can certainly indicate that Doomwatch had lost its impact significantly. With Dr. Tarrant's introduction, there appears to be several episodes based on psychological experiments and dishonourable motives on behalf of the practitioner. Although some of these tales are grim in premise, as Hair Trigger, they do have a tendency to wane in flag to the point of interest lost. There is nothing revelatory anymore, and this episode in particular could be passed off as a melodrama with a fleeting reference to sci-fact, a pale reflection on the previous 2 seasons. Other sources indicate that Terence Dudley also moved towards more fantastical elements to draw in the viewers. A couple do sound dubious in their credibility, but who am I to sincerely believe this to be the case, as all my hypothesis is based upon is a paragraph of words and differing recollections from the scant material that exists. I'm unsure how much of an impact Commander Stafford had on the season 2, as the material available either featured him generally being a hindrance or in the background doing very little. He seems to be a character of interest, but we would never get to see just how much of a threat he was to the Doomwatch team and how he fitted in with the dynamics of the other characters. One thing is for sure, that Barbara Mason is not a fan and often challenges his motives, which he seemingly crawls out of. A mammoth question mark hangs over the final outing of the Doomwatch team for one fundamental reason: the scarcity of the material. Could there be missing stories? There are rumours, but there always is, that some episodes are lurking about overseas. Doomwatch, despite its varied tales of environmental hazards, applicable to most countries in the world, is quintessentially British, and this may have been a stumbling block for marketing it abroad. Therefore, this makes the dream of stumbling upon some Season 1 and 3 stories highly remote and virtually an impossibility. We are not talking Doctor Who here. Unless a series becomes as popular again due to remake or revival, I sincerely doubt anything else much will come to light, which is a crying shame.
I'm never quite sure what that is.
A physicist who doesn't believe in God.
But who believes in Christianity.
Non-theist Christianity.
Ah, there now speaks a professional.
Oh, it'll be fun converting you.
You're welcome to try. It's something Anne's never tried to do.
What have I never tried to do?
Change my pagan ways.
Oh, Mrs. Simpson, I'm so sorry. I was in the garden. How's your husband?
Oh, he's much better. That's what I came over to tell you.
Oh, good. I rang earlier in the week and they
Lead
said...
poisoning.
What?
Would you believe it? Lead poisoning.
Lead poisoning? But did that... Are you sure?
Well, it's what the doctor there told me.
The vicar was taken ill about 3 weeks ago, Spence. He collapsed during the sermon.
Yes, you told me.
They said that the lead levels in his blood and urine were quite abnormal.
Why don't you come and play? Why are you so unhappy? Don't be upset.
Miss Abrahams is an acute depressive. Ready, Miss Abrahams?
Electrodes are planted in the patient's pleasure center in the septal region of the brain. By stimulating this pleasure center, we can counteract her severe states of anxiety and depression.
Not self-administered, though.
Not yet. That comes later?
There is the problem of addiction, you see. In the patient's own words, it's better than sex. Now, can you see the expectancy wave, Robbie?
There it is.
And rising fast.
But you wanted me. You said so. Stay still. I'm warning you.
Let go of me.
Don't
Go of me.
Don't.
Leave me alone. Let go of me.
Kill you.
Let go of me.
Do that to me.
Let go of me. Let go of me.
Kill you.
Let go of me.
Kill you.
The final season of Doomwatch, Season 3, was broadcast from the 5th of June 1972 to the 14th of July 1972. The first episode, as discussed, was called Fire and Brimstone and was written by Terence Dudley. It was broadcast on the 5th of June 72 and it dealt with terrorism and environmental threat, and is most notable for the episode where John Ridge goes completely loco. Current status in the archive: wiped. This was followed by High Mountain by Martin Worth, which focused on the mental breakdown of John Ridge, also featured elements about wonder drugs and with emphasis on political corruption. That was broadcast on the 12th of June 1972. And the archive status, you've guessed it, this one's white. Waiting for a Knighthood does exist, written by Terence Dudley, that dealt with lead poisoning, processing dangerous chemicals and potential threat through that. This exists in the archives. It's an okay episode, but a bit of a snoozer. of interest, very much so, because it's one of those rare examples and glimpses we have into the third series of Doomwatch, but unfortunately it's quite weak, to be honest with you. 5 out of 10 for that episode, I would give it personally. Broadcast on the 26th of June 72 between 9:20 and 10:10 at night. Quite an interesting story followed Waiting for a Knighthood, which was Without the Bomb, written by Roger Parks, that dealt with the subject of pheromones and a stop-go lipstick that acts as a contraception and an aphrodisiac. So moral dilemmas there for our Doomwatch team. Current status, you guessed it, white. Hair Trigger followed that by Brian Howes, broadcast on the 10th of July 1972, and as seen in some clips, dealt with lobotomies and remote-controlled psychopaths. Quite an enjoyable and thought-provoking yarn, but it certainly lacks pace. 7 out of 10 for that episode. Current status, available in the archives, which is a pleasant, nice surprise. Deadly Dangerous Tomorrow followed that, also written by Martin Worth. He seemed to be doing a lot of scripts for this series. Broadcast on the 17th of July 72, and that dealt with malaria, immigration and the use of DDT. No sources available for this because it's wiped from the archives. Inquiry followed this, written by John Gould, dated or broadcast on the 24th of July 1972, dealt with toxic gas, health and safety and corporate cover-ups. Current status, wiped again. An episode called Flood followed the episode Inquiry and was written by Ian Curtois. It was broadcast on the 31st of July 72, and it dealt with extreme weather conditions, global warming and what happens if the Thames should flood. So quite relevant for now, to be honest with you, but unfortunately we won't be able to see that. For the simple reason is that that episode is wiped. It would be interesting to see how prophetic that episode would have been. Quist and his team got involved with the aspects of euthanasia and ethics surrounding that in an episode called Cause of Death by Louis Marks, also junked from the BBC archives. And finally, season 3 of Doomwatch drew to a close with an episode called The Killer Dolphins, written by Roy Russell, that was broadcast on the 14th of August 1972 and dealt with using and manipulating animals as saboteurs and killers. Unfortunately, this is wiped also. So there you have it. Rounding off season 3, our regulars were John Paul, who played Dr. Spencer Quist, Simon Oates, John Ridge, John Barron the Minister, Elizabeth Weaver, Dr. Anne Tarrant, Joby Blanchard playing Colin Bradley, Vivian Sherrard continued her stint as Barbara Mason, and John Bown carried on with his role as Commander Neil Stafford. And it doesn't end there either. On the Simply Media DVD as an extra, there is the documentary The Cult of Doomwatch, and I believe that this is also available on YouTube, which is a documentary about the show. And yeah, it's pretty decent. Overall, I felt the programme to be a half-decent primer for an introduction to the series if criminally you had never seen it. It was admirable enough in its retrospective look at the show, and there were a few things I was unaware of too, such as the programme's influence on the merits of unleaded petrol and the government warning of doing such a story. Bloody hell. At the time, another area thankfully covered was the cool guest appearances. They all seemed to have aged well. Robert Powell was as enigmatic as ever. Simon Oates still had a glint in his eye as always, and Jean Trend was also such a welcome addition, I felt, especially as she was the first emancipated female of the series and one of the female scientists, the first ones in Doomwatch. Bit disappointing though on the downside was regarding Jeff Nolan, who played Jeff Hardcastle, and Elizabeth Weaver, who played Anne Tarrant, who weren't available at the time the documentary was made in 2006, not adding their points of views, and I really would have loved to have heard their recollections. John Nolan, for example, I felt he could have commented if Toby Wren was a hard act to follow, and his experiences of being the new sex symbol, for example. I feel Elizabeth Weaver could have added value, as many of the stories she appeared in were junked, and she oversaw seasons 2 and 3. So it's not as though either were relegated to a period of Doomwatch that we know nothing, very little of. That was a bit of a shame, because I'd love to have would love to have heard from them to fill in any gaps, a bit like Judy Loaded on the documentary for Ace of Wands, and Tony Selby. It was very interesting hearing their recollections, because it brought some of the missing episodes to life. Bit disappointed though on the fan front. Kim Newman classed Tomorrow the Rat as a thematic sign of the times and quoted Willard and Nigel Neal's Beasts as comparisons, but failed to highlight that these were all after the Doomwatch episode was broadcast. Willard was in 71 and Beast was in 76, so theoretically they were all successors of this Rats Gone Mad style of storytelling, but this was not mentioned. If it was and I overlooked, then the sincerest of apologies. If not, you should have. As for the other guy, Steve O'Brien, an editor of SFX magazine, waxing lyrical about the sexism and how cringe-inducing it was, I felt this to be a foolish demonstration of his lack of understanding programmes of this calibre and enveloping of political correctness, which has destroyed the majority of most programmes today and has relegated producers to treading on eggshells around programmes which ultimately political correctness is stifling art and stifling creativity. We've got to remember that the show was made in the 1970s after all, and life was like that. You know, if you can't watch a programme for what it is and take the genre, the time and sociological perspective into consideration, then I feel it would be best not to comment at all. So such sexism still goes on, but not as blatant, I guess, apart from quite recent times. So anyway, enough of that, to be honest with you. Some of it seemed to, the juicy bit, I suppose, in the documentary had to be the recollection of infighting between Terence Dudley and Pedler and Davis. That was very, very interesting indeed. I also commend BBC Scotland actually giving a toss about making something about Doomwatch in the first place. So if you have any sort of, you know, if you've got any spare cash, and I advise to buy the Simply Media DVD, because that extra is included, that documentary is included as an extra on there. I also recall that in the trailer in 2006, before the documentary was screened, it mentioned about why Doomwatch was so important stroke well received in Canada, but this documentary failed to cover this, and I don't know why it was popular specifically in Canada. And the reason why I would like to know is that if the programme was significantly praised and received by another country, maybe, just maybe, they still may have a few episodes that are missing from the UK archives, although that there are some Indiana Jones archive hunters out there, bless them, that have probably gone over and over and over again with television studios if they hold anything. And to be honest, like with Ace of Wands, I think something would have surfaced by now, but we are all at the mercy of private film collectors when it comes to these gems of retro television, the sort we like to view on Look, Look and Look Again. Does anyone else know how well Doomwatch was received abroad and if it was exported quite liberally? If so, please pop a comment in the box below. If you've enjoyed this, and you've enjoyed all editions so far of Look, Look and Look Again, then please hit the like button. Anyway, that's it for episode 4 of Look, Look and Look Again, and I hope to see you in episode 5. I've really enjoyed spending time with you, and until our next programme, cheerio. Bye.